Hello everyone. Today I have Lunar Bloom with Lauma. Now, quickly you can see here we are running Lauma, Aino and Kokomi. I believe this is currently the most popular Lunar Bloom, like the character selection, at least based on my experience from what I've seen other people play. I know, of course, here to give us access to Nordcry resonance cards, and Kokomi is of course a good catalyst character, as is Lauma, with 12 HP with healing properties, making her very good for the deck. Now, if you wanna bring out your own little twist, Kokomi is the ideal character to switch out for another Hydro character. Of course, we want to keep that double Hydro, one Dendro for the transfiguration. But Kokomi, like I said, can be replaced by Nuvliet, Furina, as Hydro character of your choice. Though I would say for the deck, the cards that I'm gonna show here, a character that can heal the whole team is ideal as your third option. As your second Hydro character, as your third option, which is why I do think Kokomi is the best to take. Anyway, let's look at the deck. Now, firstly, I want to state the Donut weapon is much better than Lost Prayers to the Sacred Winds for this deck. Why do I have this weapon and not the Donut? Because this weapon got buffed. It is now only a 2 cost, and it's definitely a better weapon now that it's cheaper, but for this specific deck the Donut is simply much better of an option. I only have this weapon because it got changed and I wanted to try it out. And regarding weapons, you absolutely should have a weapon, at least double catalyst in your deck for your Lunar Bloom if you're going for Lauma plus double Hydro. The only exception is if you're running Nuvliet, because Nuvliet of course deals quite good damage even without a weapon. But yeah, otherwise double talent for Lauma. For showcase purposes only, you only really need one talent for Lauma, not the double talent, but because once again I wanted to try it out, I had double. A weapon for Aino, because I was already going for weapons for Kokomi and Lauma, might as well have one for Aino. Of course, Aino's talent card for that, infinite burst and a bit of extra damage, infinite burst summon. Artifacts, double Veterans and double Marachusi Hunter, no surprise there, and of course double Maiden for some extra healing. Now, you can see here we have the Hydro Resonance card, we have the Nordcry Resonance cards, and here's a bit of an, should I say, interesting move on my part. I have double Chef Mao, but only double Mystic Soup and 2 copies of Harvest Time. This was honestly, it works, but it's probably not the best option to go for. You can pick Fortress of Meropid for this deck, though I would personally say maybe just 1 copy. Like this combo works in the late game. If you're against another star deck, the double Chef Mao, double Harvest Time combo works. But against aggressive decks where you need that healing faster, you don't have time to, fish for Harvest Time again and again. It's the Chef Mao isn't the best here. But basically, you can take whatever cards you want there, though I recommend having cards that increase survivability, so simply having like Macaronis instead of Harvest Time and switching out Chef Mao. Waranara actually works for this deck very well because we have Veterans and Marachusi Hunters. But you can change those cards out. The real, of course, trick of this deck is combining Moon and Homeland's effect with the Amrita Bloom Blessing to multiply the amount of Amritas we can have. Because the maximum amount of Amritas you can get with this deck is 3. And from experience I can tell pulling out a double Amrita is very easy. Pulling out triple Amrita requires luck with your card draws, mainly with the Moon and Homeland getting them early. But double Amrita is very much achievable, and because double Amrita already gives us so much HP, and when we have Maidens we have Kokomi, the food engine is like the full food engine isn't really that necessary for the deck. As such, the double Chef Mao, double Harvest Time odd combination actually does work out. But anyway, let's jump into the replays where I talk about Lauma's kit. Now the very first game we have a mirror match, and this is what I meant with saying this character combination is probably the most used for Lauma Lunar Bloom decks. Of course, we are using the new Arcane card with the cost reduction effect when played. Why? Because Lauma's skill deals extra damage if you have a card with cost reduction on it. As we can see right here, if your hand has a card with cost reduction, remove the cost reduction and your elemental skill and this was team status, I believe this is the Frostcove Sanctuary. Instead of 1 damage, he will deal 2 damage, as we see right here. And by the way, if you didn't know, you can check how much your opponent's Frostcove Sanctuary deals damage right here, as you can see. So yes, we have the Arcane card to increase that damage. Again, in a stall. A stall versus stall matchup, it is not a necessity to get that extra damage. It might be better to use the, if you're like, if the cost reduction goes on to your Maratusi Hunters, it might be better to just play that artifact instead of letting Lauma's skill consume it for a bit of extra damage. Like, remember once again, we do have the weapons for a reason, they are our extra damage. We don't always need that extra damage, but against aggressive decks it's always better to get that extra damage from Lauma, because you deal some extra damage. Also, when it comes to Lunar Bloom, I guess I could quickly mention here, when you have Lauma, currently only Lauma can do it. When you deal a Bloom reaction, instead it will be a Lunar Bloom. When you deal a Lunar Bloom, apply cost reduction to 1 random card in your hand. So Lunar Bloom plus 1 damage, and it applies cost reduction to a 1 random card in your hand. In addition to that, Lauma's own passive skill, when Lunar Bloom is triggered, cost reduction is applied to 1 random card in your deck. So basically, when you have Lauma in your deck, whenever you deal a Lunar Bloom, you get 2 stacks of cost reduction. 1 into your hand, the second into your deck. Okay. And by the way, you can see here already double Amrita. Like said, getting double is very, very likely. Only really against aggressive decks do you need to go with just a single Amrita. Anyway, where was I? Also, yes, like said, Lunar Bloom actually does have that plus 1 damage. Of course, there it was further buffed by the weapon. But Lunar Bloom reactions have that plus 1 innate reaction damage, so you can actually deal some real damage with Lauma. It's not like with Lunar Charged, where you don't get any additional reaction damage, unless you have Flints who actually deals. Well, actually, even Flints doesn't get additional reaction damage. Flints deals extra damage if the opponent's cards get affected by electric shock.
I know. Present.
Yeah, there was something I was supposed to say, but now I forgot it. Well, anyway, Lauma's normal attack, just a normal attack, nothing special about that. The talent card, whenever you trigger Bloom or Lunar Bloom, heal your characters for 2 HP once per round. A very nice talent card for Star decks, but like I said, you don't need 2 copies of it, 1 copy is enough. If you want to make a more optimized deck than the one I'm currently showcasing. And you can see here we got the double Amrita. Now, like I said, once again, do not purposefully try to fish for Moon and Homeland, the Nordcry Resonance card, just so you can go for that triple Amrita. It's better to go for double Amrita and be happy with that. And against aggressive decks, it's better to just play the Amrita as soon as possible. So this one doesn't really happen often, and this is also part of the reason why I don't have Fortress of Meropit in the deck, even though it would be very good. Because whenever we do have that double or triple Amrita, there's very little space in the support zone for anything else. Like that's why I only have the double Chef Mao, like to put here. I have 2 Chef Maos and I have the Transfiguration / Blessing. Nothing else goes to the support zone in my deck. And this is the reason, because when we can pull off that triple Amrita, it is just so good. And by the way, if you didn't know, when you have triple blessings, you are guaranteed 4 and 4 dice. There isn't any shenanigans regarding the sort of which dice gets, guaranteed first by the blessing. And of course, like the 4 and 4 dice is already guaranteed when you have 2 Amritas. So when you get that double Amrita, you will have perfect dice every round. Very nice. Now, a quick thing I can say about this deck. More often than not, I end up sacrificing Kokomi. Why? Because when I have Aino's talent card, like in this case, the +2 damage per round makes up for the lack of a third character. Note that there are, of course, certain scenarios where it's again better to sacrifice Aino over Kokomi. This is usually when you don't have the talent card equipped onto Aino. But when you have the talent card equipped to Aino, it's almost always better to sacrifice Kokomi over Aino. Because once again, even the double Amrita is enough to keep you alive. You don't need Kokomi's burst for that. And of course you never want to sacrifice Lauma, because then you lose your only way of applying Dendro. But you're gonna see here both of my characters that are currently alive possess more combined health than my opponent's whole team. And both have full equipment with artifacts, weapons and talent cards. And this is where you see, like, once you've drawn most of your deck, this is when the Chef Mao and Harvest Time combo actually starts to stack up some value, because the Harvest Time appears in my deck again and again, meaning that cost reduction will be affecting it again and again, meaning I actually don't pay any extra for getting those food cards. And also, because in my latest Yungasaur's video, where I originally played the Bloom Blessing, it was already quite clear that the Harvest Time has perfect synergy with the Amrita Bloom Blessing, because when you play a Harvest Time, that counts as 1 card played, and when you play the food card you get from Harvest Time, that counts as the 2nd card played for the Amrita's +2 max HP effect. And you can see here, I mean, that +6 max HP per round is just so good. And in this scenario, you see, I've drawn my whole deck, but it doesn't matter. We don't lose value out of our Lunar Blooms, because we have that double Harvest Time that keeps coming back and keeps getting cost reduced. Of course, my opponent actually has the donut weapon for their characters. Actually, there's even the Lost Prayer, the Sacred Winds weapon, which I am also using, so props to my opponent for not only using the best possible weapon. Of course, like, you see here why the donut is the better option. The immediate +1 max HP, and you only need to have 11 HP for that extra damage. Well, I mean, Lauma starts with 11 HP, Kokomi starts with 12 HP, and when you have that double Amrita increasing their max HP well above 10, it's very easy to keep that +2 damage. Not to mention, compared to the Lost Prayer, the donut gives the damage immediately. So you don't have, like with this weapon, if you didn't know, you get 1 point of extra damage at the end of a round to a maximum of 2 points. Basically, the weapon can give you +2 damage to all skills, but you have to wait 2 whole turns for it. So the moment you play the weapon, you get +0 damage. Next round you get +1, and the round after that you get finally the +2 damage. Once you have that +2 damage, it's very good, but while you are waiting for it, it just takes too long. The donut is just better. Anyway, on to the next match. So as you can see, my opponent is playing the same flinch deck. Of course, they have different action cards. And in this matchup, of course, as promised, the flinch does bring out a weapon. So you get to see how you can still win. Of course, you can argue that in this matchup I get quite lucky with my cards, and I cannot say that is definitely true. Getting double veterans and Marachusi hunters and Moon and Homeland in the starting hand is simply very, very good. And my opponent very much similar beginning to the last match, of course, because with that deck they want to double summon round 1 to get that Thunder Crowd, and then they want to start fighting round 2 onwards. I actually decide to go for setup here because I can just do a normal attack next round to get that bloom reaction for the blessing. And this match was actually played after the last game you saw and after the game where I had lost. So I had actually learned a bit, and that bit was that you want good dice for round 2 so you can play whatever it is you want to play. Also, I learned after my loss, round 2 you want to empty your hand. Because Flinch's passive talent, the 1 piercing damage, this does not activate if you don't have cards which get applied by electric shock. Meaning you can, even though it's very little, it's a little amount of damage your opponent deals with that passive when they are playing that deck. But it's still some of the damage. For in this case, like, my opponent will deal +2 damage with Flinch's passive if I have a card in my hand at the end phase. And you can see here my opponent starts trying their whole deck. They get the weapon and they still... Well, okay, in this game I kind of was remembering they went in already like round 2, but they are going in round 3. And yes, do notice they wasted a Boar Princess, even though like they weren't really about to overdraw. Well, I guess there was the Heart of Kafrina, so they would have overdrawn 1 card, but was it really better for my opponent to, you know, play Boar Princess? Actually, I'm kind of interested. Yeah, like why didn't they play, let's say, Heart of Kafrina onto Inefa here instead of, you know, of the Boar Princess? That's so you can say my opponent made a mistake here. They played definitely the wrong card to empty their hand here. Anyway, let the game continue. You can saw there I had emptied my hand so that they take as little damage as possible from my opponent's electric shock applications. And as pointed out, I am lucky in this match with getting the Moon and Homeland round 1, so I'm able to actually get double Amrita here at round 3. But you can see here my opponent starts to magically make dice appear out of thin air. Surfing Buddy was actually quite interesting, because I mean if they get rid of the Thundercloud, they actually don't get that extra damage from the Thunder Symphony Prepare skill, which in my opinion, like that's a very good source of damage for cheap that Flints can do. Because I mean that skill deals, when you have a Thundercloud on the field, that skill deals more damage than what is it? A normal attack. It deals more damage than a normal attack and only for 2 dice. And you're gonna see here
Yay!
I switch to I know with the idea of sacrificing her. And this is, by the way, the importance of double Amrita, and yes, we are going to be gambling with that food. You can see here 15 and 14 max HP respectively on Kokomi and Lauma. Of course, my opponent is able to deal a whole lot of damage this round.
The night cometh.
They still have 7 dice, but at least they have no more cards than the 4 in their hand. And we can see here, it's very, very close. Lauma gets taken out, no more Lunar Bloom for me, outside of the total of, well, a maximum of 3 Lunar Blooms I can do this game. But luckily I already have the double Amrita and my opponent was unable take me out this round. So yes, the idea when you are against a highly aggressive deck, you want that double Amrita and you want to maximize your HP, keep it as high as possible and increase it as much as possible. And you can see like 6 HP on Kokomi, it would have been 1 more hit from Flims and it would have been game over. But now I'm actually threatening to take out Flims here. By the way, earlier in the game I did tune both of my weapons to make sure I could empty my hand round 2, which is why I don't there's no extra damage coming from my side. Might as well play the Moon and Homeland to get another harvest time for next round to, you know, get as much food as possible. Of course, unfortunately I cannot play Matsutake Mitros here because I had already played the roulette food card. And the rest of the game is actually quite boring. My opponent is too scared to go to Flints anymore, and I'm just slowly able to stack more and more HP. So I'm just gonna let this one run out. While I start to think... Well, actually, this actually is a good, once again, donut propaganda. You can see here, if I had a donut, I've been over 10 HP since the attempted sweep from Flims. So having the donut, like earlier in the game, I could have easily played it and had the extra damage right here and now to be... it would have been much faster to finish this game had I gotten that. Had I had the donut in my deck. And this is also what I was talking about. Like with that deck, the only real sustainability you know, HP wise that my opponent has is Furina's Summon. Outside of that, there's no form of healing in their deck. The last guy at least had, you know, Chef Mouse and Mystic Soup, so there was some additional healing. Though I suppose you could argue they had the Narcissus and Goo card for the Natiums, +2 card draws, and that card also gives HP for that deck, since there's the full value from same weapon, same element, and same faction. But of course, Flynns is the only character on my opponent's team that can actually deal damage, and because my opponent is too scared to go to Flynns, they have no hope of winning this. Like I'm actually surprised how scared my opponent was in this game to go to Flynns. I was like many times I was expecting that okay, now they are finally gonna go to Flynns, but nope, they just refuse to do it. And of course, like you can see here, they won't have that much HP. Not to mention they've already like lost all of their ways of creating extra dice. Flynn simply isn't able to deal this much damage that quickly. Like I'm pretty certain at this stage, because I have the double Amrita, I have the food engine next round up and running, they just won't be able to deal enough damage. Even if they now go to Flynns and go all out, even with that Furina burst and the few stacks they have. So yeah, like my opponent, there was the arguable Ball Princess mistake, then there was the, after that, the quite clear way too afraid to go to Flynns mistake. Like they should have just gone to Flynns earlier and they could have at least tried to fight back, but
Close your eyes.
You can see here like they just don't deal enough damage anymore. And now they have no form of healing. It's quite clear that I will win this game. So yeah, this is how you deal with aggressive decks. Now, if you are against a more AoE damage type of deck, then I would say rush Kokomi Burst as soon as possible. Don't go to Aino at all. Usually the game plan, I kind of forgot, I was meant to explain that. Usually the game plan is Lauma skill, Aino skill, try to get Aino's, if you get Aino's talent card, rush Aino's burst. If you don't get Aino's talent card, you can go back to Kokomi and collect Kokomi burst. And after you've gotten, then either after you've rushed Aino burst, slowly start taking out your opponent while going for Kokomi burst and refreshing Lauma skill. And if you go for Lauma and not Aino burst, then go for Aino burst once you get the talent card. Or if there's a scenario where you need to sacrifice one of your characters, switch to Aino then. Anyway, next game. Now for the next match we have Bond of Life and we have Rimgrass Transfiguration. Now actually, while I don't, once again, particularly like Transfigurations because they take the fun out of deck building, because they just are, hey, play this card and you basically have a second arcane card in your deck. And if you don't play it, you are shooting yourself in the foot. That is my opinion on the Blessings and the Transfigurations. They are way too strong. But I do have to say the Rimgrass is actually a good Transfiguration because it creates the opportunity to actually play new, unique decks. Rimgrass is currently the only Transfiguration I can respect.
We'll need a strategy.
Of course, I do play the other Transfigurations myself. Even I do play the Transfigurations because once again, if you don't play them, you are purposefully shooting yourself in the foot. You are giving yourself a handicap if your deck doesn't include a Transfiguration. Like the amount of, if you go look at the best meta decks currently in the game, is there like one? Like I guess Linear Escoffier is still considered like I haven't honestly checked what is the top meta these days, but from what I've understood, from what I remember from the end of last patch, Escoffier Linear is still considered a meta deck, and every other meta deck has Transfiguration in it. So if there isn't amazing synergy with your deck without Transfiguration, and it's not a Transfiguration deck, it is just not a good deck by like modern standards of the game. If you are not running Transfiguration or an amazing synergy in your deck, then you are just giving yourself a handicap. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say here. But the main point I'm saying, Rungrass actually very, very cool, giving us a whole new group of decks we can start testing out. But you can see here, my opponent definitely should be able to hard counter me. They have Frost Operative for Bond of Life. They have just played Serai Island to punish me for healing.
Yay! Playtime!
But there is the slight upside, they have yet gotten the Transfiguration activation.
I'm cold.
And in this game, if nothing else, you get to see that Avrita is actually completely perfectly balanced, and there's, you know, absolutely no reason to nerf it or anything, or nerf, you know, blessings in general, because you can see there's 5 Point of Life on Lauma. There's Distant Storm from the Serai Island on Kokomi. Like, my opponent definitely should be winning this one. Like, all they really need is Talent Card for Frost Operative, and there's nothing I can do, right? You know, right? There's nothing I can do. So anyway, yeah, I'm not including this. I'm including this game because I know I won it. Spoilers ahead. But as you can see, the Serai Island is now out of the game. Kokomi burst. My opponent once again still hasn't gotten the Transfiguration Blessing to activate, which they definitely should have by now. That is the sole reason why I'm doing this good. And of course, because my opponent wasn't actually able to stack up a bunch of Point of Life because they didn't play Frost Operative's Talent Card. And you can see there was that 5 Point of Life onto Lauma. Well, it's not there much longer. By the way, once again, the reason why Double Chef Mao is actually pretty decent for this deck. When you only play one Amrita, it's good to have that alternative source of extra dice and healing with the incomplete food engine this deck currently has. Like, once again, the Fatui Ambush is now the reason the Ringgrass isn't actually going to activate. Like that. Only now, when I end my round, does my opponent finally get the blessing to activate. And like I said, the main reason why I think I won this match, they got the blessing far too late to actually be a threat. Because at this point I have equipment, I have Kokomi Burst, I have mostly cleared out the Bond of Life on Lauma, so it should be no trouble at all. Oh yeah, I could actually give a quick little tip. When you play against Ringgrass, of course, you can use Kokomi's skill to cleanse the element so your opponent doesn't get the Transfiguration to activate. But also, Cryo takes priority over Dendro. So when you have a character with both Cryo and Dendro application, the Cryo is the one that takes priority from Fatui ambush, from your opponent's reactions, from Kokomi's skill. So it's always the Cryo first, and Dendro activates only if it's the only element affecting your character. Oh yeah, I guess I kind of forgot because I don't really use it. Lauma Burst. I kind of forgot to mention what it does, but it's apply 3 cost reduction to random cards in your hand, and your next 3 Lunar Boom reactions deal +1 damage. I actually use Lauma's Burst very rarely because the extra damage you need with this deck, you get it from the weapons. Lauma Burst is, and when you are running that new Arcane card, when you are running the when you are running Lauma in general, your hand usually is so filled with cost reducted cards, like you can see here. There isn't much value to be gained by playing Lauma's Burst here to use cost reduction on these cards, which is why I play it very, very rarely. And by the way, nice little extra damage from the harvest time, letting us finish the game. Anyway, one last replay for today. Now for the last game of today. I noticed this is already quite a long video at this point. I can see the recording time is already at 45 minutes. Actually 44 if we are being completely accurate, but for the last game we have Yungasaurus against a Yungasaurus version of the same deck against the Kokomi. Now of course the main thing, the difference here, of course, my opponent definitely has a food engine, and my opponent cannot have Hydro Resonance. Those are like the main differences here between our decks, which we can see and we can guess because they are running Yungasaurus. And while Yungasaurus definitely in my opinion was the best partner for your Bloom decks last patch, this patch, simply because the double triple Amrita is just so strong, you should run just Lunar, or even like well yeah, I guess if you're going for Nilo Bloom decks, then Yungasaurus is still like Amrita, Nilo, Yungasaurus. That is still a very good combo, but if you wanna go for Lunar Bloom, Yungasaurus is not that good of an option. Because, like you can see here, only by playing those specific characters can my opponent get multiple Amritas. Which is of course what they are aiming for. Though Underwater Treasure was kind of a surprising card from my opponent, but talent card from I know very, very good for my opponent, because they now deal increased damage once per round with their reaction. Lunar Bloom reaction. But as you saw, I already copied one Amrita in this match, so we are going to have at least double Amrita. And actually very good for me, I got the weapons relatively early, because in this sort of matchup I need the weapons to be able to combat the surviving capabilities of the Yungasaurus. Once again, because my opponent doesn't have Hydro Resonance, they don't have, you know, healing properties from their characters. That yeah, Lauma's talent does heal Yungasaurus, but like they don't have any real way to, you know, heal I know effectively. Like I have Kokomi, I can Kokomi Burst and heal my whole team with that, but my opponent cannot do that.
Even when darkness falls.
Because that is the case, getting the weapons here is very important, because outside of like Yungasaurus of course can heal basically infinitely as long as they have food cards. Amrita only heals the lowest HP character, so having the weapons to combat that damage is very important. But you can see they also played Moon and Homeland with their... No, hold on. Yeah, Moon and Homeland with their Amrita, so they too will be having that double Amrita. I of course unfortunately got my second Moon and Homeland a little late. I can no longer make the triple Amrita possible, but I do have the double Chef Mao, so if I get lucky and draw Harvest Time or a Mystic Soup, I can get my food engine running here. And you can actually see here, they get the double Amrita. Most of the healing goes to Aino, because of course Aino has only been healed by the Amrita, meaning that the lowest HP character is still actually Aino. Then again, Lauma had good HP and Yungasaurus was also on good HP, but of course my opponents, ideally they would want the max HP increase onto their Yungasaurus. I was kind of... also one thing I knew while playing this match, my opponent definitely has Adeptus Temptation. Like from the first point here when they got that Yungasaurus
Victory will be ours.
burst ready to go with that 2 energy, every move I make I'm considering the fact that if they fast swap Adeptus burst Yungasaurus, can I survive that? Because that's like a real threat here, the only real threat. Like of course Aino's talent card makes my opponent deal a good amount of extra damage, but that's only like +2 damage once per round. The Adeptus burst from Yungasaurus is the real threat here. Unsurprisingly we see Harvest Time, but we haven't yet seen any food engine from my opponent, so I'm actually looking better as soon as I start drawing my food cards, which is also part of the reason why I'm drawing a good amount of cards here, is because I'm trying to look for food cards or the Harvest Time cards here. Of course I got quite unlucky, you can see 9 cards left, I've yet to draw on any of those, but finally a Harvest Time appears, I can start gain value from my double Chef Mao. Really no point going for the Tandoori Chicken, because the Lauma doesn't have a weapon and the base damage is only 1, and while Aino could deal a good amount of damage, Aino is also only at 7 HP, so it's quite easy for my opponent to snipe Aino here. I'm once again purposely staying on Kokomi because 1, I can heal my whole team, and if they fast swap Adeptus burst Yungasaurus, Kokomi will survive. Also one thing I was kind of surprised, my opponent waits quite long. Like you can see my Kokomi had over 10 HP there, my Lauma has 16 HP. My opponent probably should have stayed longer on Yungasaurus specifically and, you know, just bursted even without an Adeptus and started to just, you know, tank the damage on Yungasaurus so that the Amritas would have started to activate onto it instead of Lauma or Aino. Like I understand wanting to refresh Aino's skill, but not I don't really understand going for Aino even though they had run out of their infinite burst, because they... By the way, like the reason why my opponent's infinite burst ran out was because they had no cards which could have been affected by the empowerment from the talent card. And when there's no empowerment, the Aino's passive skill doesn't activate, granting them +1 usage for the burst summon. My opponent finally goes for the burst, but you can see no Adeptus, and even with Adeptus it would not have been enough. And here you see the reason why the weapons are important. That 4 damage with each hit is simply very, very strong for us, allowing us to actually threaten Jungasaurus, often considered to be unkillable. Then they pull out probably the most surprising move to me. They had adventure cards. Like, so far in the game I have seen no indication of any sort of adventure, but then they play adventure cards when their support zone is full. Very odd, but I guess desperate times call for desperate measures. And I even finally draw that I know talent card, so it's time to burst her. Once again, the nice weapon giving us a bit of extra damage. And the Ghost reducted talent card allowing us to take out I know, and my opponent realizes it's over and gives up. So yeah, that's a whole lot for today. But what can I do when most of my matches were against other style decks? Anyway, I very much like Lauma. You can actually even make a proper DPS Lauma if you just switch out weapons and add some good artifacts and such. You can make a Lauma into a DPS character, which is quite funny indeed. But yeah, that's all for today. I see you all next time.